Well, hey, North Park Community Church. Pastor Luke here with another episode of First Looks. And we are in our third message of 4 in the book of Ruth. And we are taking one chapter at a time. So that puts us in Ruth chapter 3, looking at the whole chapter. We've been doing this because each chapter is kind of its own episode where it's got its own kind of location, primary conversation between characters, and progression through the overall narrative. And so chapter 3 is going to be advancing where we left off in chapter 2, obviously. And maybe just for the sake of noting it, chapter 2 ends by saying that Ruth kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvests, and she lived with her mother-in-law. So in chapter 1, Ruth and Naomi arrive in Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. Okay. Now, in chapter 2, and this is ends. Chapter 2 ends at the conclusion, at the end of barley and wheat harvest. You might be saying, why in the world does this matter? Well, this is why. So chapter 3 picks up picks up at the end of chapter 2. And so what I want to draw attention to is the beginning of barley harvest would have been 6-7 weeks prior to the beginning of the wheat harvest. And so what happens in chapter 2 as Ruth is going to glean from these fields that happened to be Boaz's fields, and then he blesses her and he says, go ahead and keep gleaning from my fields only. I'll take care of you. I'll make sure nobody harasses you. I'll make sure that you're taken care of. So that's at the beginning of chapter 2 is at the beginning of the barley harvest. The end of chapter 2 is going to be the end of the wheat harvest. So you probably have about 2 months have gone by when Naomi comes up with her plan in 3, 1, and following. Okay, so that gives us just a little bit of maybe a better understanding of the time progression. So good. Now Boaz has been identified as a goel. Let me go ahead and just, which is a redeemer. Okay. Here's your Hebrew word there. And then just maybe to keep it in front of us, the two most important words in this book: goel, redeemer, which shows up I think like some 20 some times in these 4 chapters, and then chesed, which is loving kindness. You have some other important words as well. I don't want to say that there aren't other important words. You have the interplay between emptiness and fullness. So you got others that are playing a significant role, but especially in chapter 3 here, goel and hesed will be really important for us to keep on our minds as we move forward here. So let's start looking at the text a little bit. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, Ruth's mother-in-law, said to her, Ruth, that is, my daughter. Now I highlight this just to emphasize the deep familial relationship of love and devotion between Ruth / Naomi. The narrator will keep the proper relational dynamics in front of us by using the in-law designation. Even Boaz at the end of this will refer to Naomi as Ruth's mother-in-law. But between Naomi and Ruth, the in-law has been dropped. There's no longer that designation that keeps maybe a more of a level of distance, even though there's still love with in-laws. It makes it it's just a deeper connection here that we're seeing from Naomi, and that's important to know, because what we see from Naomi is that what she's gonna tell Ruth to do is for Ruth's own good, not Naomi's good. So it says it right in this next line here. She says to Ruth, "Should I not seek rest for you?" Rest is another one of those important words as well. Should I not seek rest for you? This is Naomi's hesed toward Ruth, that it may be well with you. This is good and this is right. You're young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. There's a redeemer in our family who can provide for you and care for you, give you a place of belonging. You don't have to be a destitute widow with me forever. And so she says, "Is Boaz not our relative, with whose young women you were?" Okay, so you've been gleaning on his field. You've seen his generosity. You've seen the quality of man that he is, you've been there. You've gotten to know him over these couple months. You've seen that he's not a man. This is important. He is not a man who takes advantage of people. That's really significant when you are a foreign, destitute woman. You were highly susceptible to being taken advantage of. That's why when we looked at chapter 2 last week, we noted 3 times in chapter 2, Boaz is saying, don't worry about the men in the fields. They know not to touch you, not to say a word to you. And so he demands it of those on his field, that Ruth be respected and protected. And for 2 months' time now, he has shown that quality to be part of his character. He wasn't a nice guy to try to get something later, or to take advantage of Ruth. No, he is quality. He is a worthy and virtuous man in chapter 2, verse 1. So let me just kind of put that. He is a worthy. I think that's how the ESV has it in chapter 2, verse 1. He's a worthy man. Okay. And he's a relative. So that means he's qualified to be a redeemer. So it continues here. Here's the instruction. See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. So winnowing is when you would you take kind of like pitchforks, and you would grab everything, your sheaves that you've collected, and you throw it up in the air. The air would blow all the chaff and other things away, and then the barley and the wheat grain, the barley grain would be heavier, and so it would fall to the ground. So it was the way of separating the wheat and the chaff, quite literally. And you would do that on a threshing floor, which would have been a hard surface. So if you could have found like maybe a plateau on a hill or something that was a rock base or something like that, that's a good place to kind of clean off the surface, and then make sure that you're not losing any of your barley or wheat. And so that's what he's doing. It's that time, once you've done all of the harvesting and the collecting, then you do the winnowing on the threshing floor, and you prepare it to be taken into town and sold. And so Naomi says, you know that he's there, so wash, aka take a bath, anoint yourself. This is, in our terminology, put on deodorant and perfume. So get clean, smell good, put on your cloak. And so why are you putting this here? Put on your cloak. What else are you going to put on? Well, it's important because this is kind of a generic term. The men's cloak, the women's cloak, it's just this generic garment that everybody wore. Why it's significant is because Ruth was likely still in mourning garments. All right, so she was probably still wearing the black, that designates that she's mourning the loss of her husband, and she's a widow who's grieving, and so what this is saying is, Naomi is telling her is my daughter, it's time to be done grieving, and it's time to move forward with your life. That's what she's telling. I know that there's probably still sadness, and the sadness might still be there, but you can't remain paralyzed in your sadness. It's time to make the appropriate next steps. And so she says, go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. So, okay, so wait until Boaz is asleep. This is weird. These are strange instructions here. And she says, when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and do what? Uncover his feet, lie down, and he will tell you what to do. And Ruth replies, all that you say, I will do. We see Ruth's devoted commitment to Naomi. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Only death will separate us. And whatever you say, I'm gonna do it. Now, I do wanna circle back up a little bit right here to these strange instructions. Strange instructions here. Let me make a couple points. One, there are some things we know about what is happening, but two, there are other elements that we simply cannot be certain about. Okay, so here's what Ruth is told to do. She says Boaz is going to have a big old meal, probably eat well, have some wine, and rejoice in just the hard labor that has produced great fruitfulness, but also just a celebration of God's provision. Undoubtedly, that's there. He's just rejoicing in the harvest is what he's doing, and when he's done eating and drinking, he's gonna go to sleep there. This was common for men to sleep there. Not as common for the owner of the field himself, but Boaz is a man. He seems to be out in the fields working with his servants. He doesn't just hire and send them out there. He goes out there and works alongside them, it seems, at least in the management way. But it certainly seems to imply that he labors along with his servants. And so you would sleep out there because the city of Bethlehem would have probably had it would have had a wall around it. It would have been kind of a defensive structure, but out there where the fields were, you really didn't have any defenses out there. And so if you have all of your harvest sitting out in the open, you're at risk of thieves coming and stealing it, and also animals coming and just making a dent into it. And so it was very common for men to sleep out with their harvests after they've winnowed, just to protect it before they take it in. So that's why he's out there in the dark outside of the city, sleeping on the threshing floor. And Naomi says, you want to go there, and where he's laying, you want to uncover his feet. So he would have had a blanket, or at least he would have had some garments that he would have draped over himself to stay warm at night. And Naomi says, now uncover his legs, and then lay down. Okay, and then she says, and then just wait and listen to whatever he says. So whatever he says, do it. So the uncovering his feet is kind of strange. There are some different thoughts there about it. But this is something that would have been very unusual because this out in the threshing floor is where you had a lot of sexual immorality would go on out there, because you would have men who were out alone in the dark, and so often the town prostitutes would find their way out there and would conduct their business, for lack of better phrasing there. And so it's very unusual that Naomi tells Ruth to go out there as a lone woman and uncover his legs and lay down and wait to see what happens. That could have very easily been misconstrued in a promiscuous way, as a promiscuous act, and that a man of virtue and nobility like Boaz, that could have been highly misinterpreted. That could have cast Ruth in a very different light. And so this is a risky set of instructions that Naomi has given to Ruth. But there seems to be some reason that Naomi has to trust that Boaz will handle this well. She seems to trust that this will work, even against kind of normal recommendations from worldly perspective. She thinks that this will work. So here we go, going on. So she went down, this is Ruth. Ruth went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry. This right here, we do not want to misinterpret this as he was drunk. This is not drunk. This is delighting and satisfied. Maybe that's a way we could put it. This is this is contented, at peace, satisfied. And he's delighting. That's what it's communicating to us. And so following that, he goes and he lies down at the end of the heap grain, and in comes Ruth softly. So she sneaks in. This is a covert operation. She sneaks in, uncovers his feet, and then lays down. And then at midnight, the man was startled. Now this is this could very much be interpreted as he shivered, because his legs were exposed, and by midnight the air would have started to get cold and crisp, and so at midnight he's startled, and he turns over, and kind of wakes up from the cold, starts to roll over, and what does he see? Behold! This is a exclamatory. Word for the narrator here. A woman lay at his feet. Oh, well, we got an exclamation point, so picked up on by the translators there. And what in the world is this? He says, who are you? And so in the dark at midnight, outside the city, a woman is there. He can't see who it is. And it must be going through his mind that it's a prostitute. And she starts to talk. She says, "I am Ruth, your servant." Now this is cool. This is cool. Your servant. In chapter 2, was it maybe 2:12, 2:13? 2:13? In 2:13, Ruth says, "I am not one of your servants." So something has happened, and she is what I would suggest here as I read through and think about this is Ruth has learned to receive the hesed kindness of Boaz, and all of the distancing parts of her identity, her being a Moabite woman, her not being one of his servants, all of those things, those identity markers that would have put distance between her and Boaz, those seem to have dropped to a degree. She still has a humble deference towards Boaz, and so she still acknowledges her lowliness in his presence. But then look at the stroke of boldness here. She says, "Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." Spread your wings. This is 2:12 here. Spread your wings in Oh, this is fantastic here. In 2:12, Boaz um, uh, gives Ruth a blessing as one um, who has taken refuge under the wings of the Lord. And so he gives her that blessing in chapter 2 verse 12, as he's just recognizing her hesed kindness towards Naomi and clinging to her and not departing from her. And he says, because of your hesed kindness towards your mother-in-law, he says, then may you be blessed because you have found refuge under the wings of the Lord. And now she says to him, spread your wings over your servant. This is very loaded stuff here. His wings, that's the same word as for the corner of someone's cloak. So in one sense, she's saying, spread your cloak over me. And at like a very surfacey level, it could just be, I'm cold. Can you share some blanket? But no, there's much more than that going on here, and we know that from other passages of scripture, such as Malachi 4:2. Malachi 4:2 says, but this is the Lord speaking, Malachi speaking prophetically on behalf of the Lord. He says, but you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings, and you shall go out leaping like calves in the stall. And so God wings as a refuge and protection for his people is something that's spoken of the Lord. And in a sense here, here's what she's saying. She's saying, be the answer to your prayer for me. She said, you prayed that I would have refuge under the wings of the Lord. Let me come under your wings and be the answer to the prayer that you had for me. Now, also, this spread your wings over your servant. This is also, this is an old Israelite idiom for a marriage proposal. So there's so much going on here. She's in one sense, she's asking for a marriage proposal, and that's very clear. You're a redeemer, so redeem me, be a kinsman redeemer to my husband, and therefore to me, through marriage. But she also recognizes that there's something deeper here, that God's blessings can come to her, and not only to her, but also to her mother-in-law, through Boaz doing this, and so it's just really a sweet thing there. For you are a redeemer. There's our word that we made note of earlier. Go L. Did that show up earlier? I like to sometimes make note of that. No, he's just called relative up earlier. Okay, so and he said, this is his response. She essentially gives a marriage proposal, and that should be just catching all the readers just in a number of ways. I mean, think about how backwards this is. This is a woman proposing to a man. This is a servant proposing to the master. This is a Moabite proposing to an Israelite. In every way, this is backwards and unusual, and the initial readers would have been, what in the world? What in the world is this? And he said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. So he begins with, look at this, be blessed, may you be blessed. by the Lord, my daughter. And so maybe a designation of the age difference here, or the love he's just developed for her. He said this. Now look at this. You have made this kindness. That's Hesed there. You have made this kindness greater than the first. What's the first? The first is what's talked about in 2:11. In 2:11, where her Hesed, it's Ruth's Hesed to Naomi in clinging to her. And he said, this kindness is greater than even that kindness. And why? He says this. This is really neat. He says, in that you have not gone after young men, poor men, or rich men. Why would you go after young men? Prime of life, lots of years ahead, ideally. She knows not to count on that. Poor and rich. So you're not going after rich men for their wealth and possessions. And poor, why would you go after a poor guy? And I think one commentator suggests this, that the inclusion of poor is a way of saying for your own love. And so you might think of some of those I don't know, fairy stories, romantic stories where the princess falls in love with a stable boy or something like that. And why would a princess ever want to marry a stable boy? Well, only because of genuine love. And he's saying you're not doing this to get a young man out of the equation. You're not doing this because out of love for your own sake. That's the key. And you're not doing this for wealth. And Boaz is wealthy. He's a landowner. He seems just be wealthy throughout this whole story in the way that he's talked about and presented. And so how does he not fit into the rich category? And here's the thing, is that the Hesed is by definition never for one's own gain. It's always for the good of another. And so he designates this as Hesed, meaning what you're doing, Ruth, you're doing it A, for Naomi, and potentially B, for him as well. You could kind of put that in there where he kind of takes it as a flattering of a oh, you want me to be your redeemer? You could maybe see a little element of that in there. You chose me over all of the other guys, and you do me a Hesed kindness. I don't know. I see, especially from what we find at the very end of this chapter, I think that Boaz is wise enough to see that everything Ruth is doing is out of a loving, devoted, Hesed kindness for Naomi. And he, I think, just respects that. Look at what he says now. He says right after this, now my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask. For all of my, he says, I'll do it because all of my fellow townsmen know that you are worthy woman. And that, okay, so, all right, let's take this here. Worthy, just, this is same word used in chapter 2, verse 1 of Boaz. Also, Also, same word used of the virtuous wife in Proverbs 31:10. And it's this designation right here that has Ruth following the book of Proverbs in the Hebrew sorting of the Old Testament. So for us, it comes after Judges because it says in the time of Judges. So chronologically, Ruth fits right after Judges, but thematically, the Hebrew scriptures put it right after Proverbs as the exemplar of the Proverbs 31 woman. So here's the thing: how did she get this designation? How did Ruth get designated as worthy? And I would suggest by her hard labor and unceasing devotion for the good of Naomi. And I think that's why Boaz rightly assesses her marriage proposal as a selfless act to provide for and care for her mother-in-law, to see that Naomi is cared for, because she's beyond childbearing age and all of that, and so likely not gonna be remarried, and therefore will remain a destitute widow, and so Ruth sees a way, and so that's where this whole story is so sweet, because notice Naomi plots this for Ruth's good, but Boaz readily understands Ruth to be concerned with Naomi's good. It makes it beautiful. It makes it a beautiful story. It says, now it's true that I am a redeemer, yet, and this is behold, there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight and in the morning. If he will redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he is not willing to redeem you, then as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until the morning. And so this almost comes off as a shocking remembering, but becomes a promise and assurance that Boaz will see to Ruth's care. Now, we're going to see a little bit of shrewdness from old Boaz. You don't become a wealthy businessman without a little bit of shrewdness. And so now we'll see in chapter 4 his angle to end up with Ruth in the long run. Spoiler, if you were waiting for week 4 to find out how it would end. we see he's got some shrewdness, and I think that shrewdness is because I think we'll see that there's a love for Ruth, and I think B, I think that he knows that he will give the best care. I think there's an element in there as well. That's not explicit. That's just kind of me grabbing the whole vibe of the story a little bit. And he says, "Lie down until morning," and this is all so that now he's concerned with protecting Ruth's reputation. That's his concern here. So she laid at his feet, so she arose before one could recognize another. So while it was still dark and she wouldn't be readily seen or identified, she gets up. He does as well. He says, "Let it be known that this woman came to the threshing floor." And he said, let it not be known that this woman came to the threshing floor. That could look quite improper. Then he says, bring a garment that you're wearing and hold it out. So she held it out. She measured 6 measures of barley, put it on her. Then she went to the city. Now this could be, when you're looking at this, like maybe this is just pure generosity that he gives her all of that? Is it to have a good excuse in case that she gets caught? That she could say, "Oh, no, I just went out here. My mother and I, we were starving and went out for grain, and he generously gave it, and that's the only reason that I was out there." So it could be an excuse, could be generosity. We see that while it could be a little bit of both, we get a little bit more, and I think it's some more of Boaz's shrewdness too, in just a moment here. And so she comes home. Naomi says, "How did you fare, my daughter?" And so, catch this here. So Ruth told all that the man had done for her, saying, "These 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said to me, you must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law." Okay. What do we do here? So we have all the dialogue. All the dialogue above is not cited here. Okay? What is cited is not mentioned above. Why this? Now, there's some different thoughts here. Some would say that maybe Boaz was giving this as kind of like a token of good faith, that he would come through on his promise. He's an honorable guy. I don't think he really needs that. He might be. Maybe it is. It could be, again, as we mentioned above, maybe this is just his sheer generosity, that he's just a guy of abundant, lavish generosity. But it says, I think this is just very, very key right here. Empty-handed to your mother-in-law. As I think about him knowing that Ruth was concerned with Naomi's good, I think that there's an element here of this is a move to show both Ruth and Naomi that he will care for Naomi when he marries Ruth. I think that's what's being communicated there. And this is just great. And so this is how it wraps up. It says, "So wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest until he settles the matter." And so this is worth this is of significance too. The man the man will not rest. Okay, so just catch this. Rest is what begins and what ends this chapter. Notice, I'm going to highlight this. I think I might capitalize on this more than what I initially thought. Seek rest for you. So Naomi wants to seek rest for Ruth. Down here, the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. And so Boaz will not rest so that Ruth can have rest. Isn't that great? So you see what's and you see him as the Redeemer, and so goodness, are there not just myriad implications of the Lord, how the Lord treats His people, and the gospel of rest for us? Think of Hebrews 3 and 4 there. Of the rest that we have in Christ. Rest in Christ, our Redeemer, our Goel. That'll preach. Okay, well, there it is. We've worked through this. I think time is up, and so hopefully this is helpful. I've certainly enjoyed just combing through this, and so excited to see how this gets shaped into a sermon, and the sermon that the Lord has for us, North Park. So I love you, and I'll see you in a couple days.